Nothing is a coincidence. The Buddhist wisdom that will transform your life often feels like a collection of random events, sudden encounters, and unpredictable twists that appear disconnected from one another. At times, human beings struggle to see meaning in experiences that feel unfair or inexplicable. Yet within the tradition of Buddhist wisdom, there is a profound teaching that nothing is casual, arbitrary, or meaningless. Every moment, whether joyful or painful, carries within it the seed of awakening, the opportunity for transformation, and the invitation to see reality as it truly is. This perspective requires us to step beyond the surface appearances of chance and coincidence into a deeper awareness of interconnection, impermanence, and the law of cause and effect that permeates existence. When the Buddha spoke of dependent origination, he revealed that nothing in the universe arises independently. Every phenomenon, whether material or mental, is linked to countless other causes and conditions. The rain that falls today is not an isolated occurrence, but the result of clouds formed by evaporated waters, winds that carried them across the skies, and temperatures that shifted to allow condensation. In the same way, the conversations we have, the people we meet, and the challenges we endure are shaped by a web of causes that extend far beyond our immediate vision. To see this clearly is to understand that what we often call coincidence is, in reality, the unfolding of a greater tapestry in which we are intimately woven. This teaching has the power to transform life because it calls us to move from a passive sense of being victims of chance toward an active recognition of meaning in every moment. If nothing is coincidence, then every difficulty is a lesson, every joy is a gift, and every encounter is an opening for growth. With this understanding, we begin to live more intentionally, with patience and compassion, perceiving patterns that guide us closer to wisdom and liberation. In what follows, we will explore in depth how Buddhist wisdom illuminates the truth that nothing is coincidence. We will enter into 5 expansive reflections, each unveiling an aspect of this teaching and its practical relevance for our modern lives. These reflections will not only explain the concepts, but will also invite you to contemplate your own experiences in light of them, discovering how every event, no matter how small, can be a doorway to insight. The interwoven web of dependent origination. To understand why nothing is coincidence, we must begin with one of the central pillars of Buddhist philosophy, the teaching of dependent origination, or pratyasamutpada. This concept reveals that all phenomena arise due to specific causes and conditions, and when those conditions change or cease, the phenomena also transform or fade. This is not simply a theoretical doctrine. It is a profound lens through which we can view our lives, making visible the invisible threads that connect all events and beings. Imagine for a moment a single lotus blooming on the surface of a pond. At first glance, one might think the flower simply appeared there as a beautiful accident of nature, but when we look deeper, we see that the lotus exists because of countless conditions: the soil beneath the water, the rays of sunlight striking the pond, the rains that nourish the earth, the seed carried by wind or water, the seasons that allowed it to mature, and even the observer's eyes and consciousness that perceive the flower. The lotus is not an isolated entity. It is the culmination of innumerable elements coming together in harmony. In the same way, our lives are not isolated or random. Each of us carries within us the imprints of ancestry, culture, childhood experiences, personal choices, and the influences of countless beings we have met along the path. The friends we encounter, the challenges we face, the opportunities that appear, all are born of conditions that extend far beyond what we see on the surface. To call them coincidence is to ignore the vast web of interdependence that sustains them. The Buddha often illustrated this teaching through the chain of 12 links of dependent origination, which demonstrates how ignorance gives rise to formations, Formations to consciousness, consciousness to name and form and so on, until the cycle culminates in old age and death. While this chain may seem abstract, its meaning is simple. Nothing appears in isolation, and everything we experience is conditioned by what came before. When we see this, we recognize that even the smallest action, a kind word, a harmful thought, a compassionate gesture, sets into motion ripples that extend beyond what we can measure. In practical terms, this means that the so-called coincidences in life are not random, but rather the natural unfolding of these interwoven ripples. The stranger you meet, who offers exactly the guidance you needed at that moment, is not a product of chance, but the fruit of countless invisible connections. Your choices that brought you to that place, their journey that intersected with yours, the web of circumstances that allowed that encounter to occur. Consider, for example, the story of Angulimala, the notorious bandit who encountered the Buddha. To an outsider, their meeting might seem accidental, but in truth, it was the result of Angulimala's own karma, the Buddha's compassionate mission, and the convergence of countless conditions that brought them face to face. That encounter changed Angulimala's life forever, transforming him from a murderer into a monk devoted to the Dharma. Was it coincidence? Or was it the manifestation of dependent origination, the precise moment when conditions aligned to allow transformation? For those who live with awareness of this truth, life ceases to appear fragmented. We begin to perceive the hidden order beneath apparent randomness. A lost job, which at first feels like misfortune, becomes the doorway to a more fulfilling career. A painful breakup, though filled with suffering, creates the space for self-discovery and deeper relationships. A sudden illness, while difficult, awakens gratitude for health and compassion for others who suffer. None of these are mere accidents. They are interdependent conditions unfolding for the sake of growth. But how do we train ourselves to see this web of interconnection in daily life? The practice begins with mindfulness. When we slow down and observe each moment without judgment, we notice the subtle chains of cause and effect that shape our experiences. A harsh word leads to anger, which leads to conflict. A gentle smile leads to trust, which opens the possibility for friendship. In mindfulness, we see how every action matters and how even small choices contribute to the larger unfolding of our lives. Meditation deepens this insight. As we sit in stillness and observe the rising and falling of breath, thoughts and sensations, we begin to notice that nothing arises without a cause. Each thought has a seed, perhaps a memory, a desire, or a fear. Each sensation has a condition, perhaps hunger, fatigue, or environment. The mind itself reveals the principle of dependent origination, teaching us that no experience is uncaused or coincidental. Recognizing this truth also reshapes our relationships. When we see others not as isolated individuals, but as being shaped by countless conditions, compassion naturally arises. The person who hurts us does so not by coincidence, but because of their own suffering, ignorance, or conditioning. Instead of blaming or resenting them, we begin to understand and forgive. Likewise, when someone brings us joy, we recognize that their kindness is also the fruit of many causes, their upbringing, their practice, their own struggles, and gratitude blossoms. This understanding liberates us from the illusion of randomness and empowers us to live with purpose. If nothing is coincidence, then every moment is an opportunity to plant seeds of wisdom and compassion. Every word, every action, every thought has the power to shape the conditions of the future. When we live with this awareness, we no longer drift passively through life, but walk with intention, contributing consciously to the unfolding of the web we inhabit. And so, the teaching of dependent origination is not only a philosophical truth, but a call to action. It reminds us that we are responsible for the seeds we plant, and that what may appear as coincidence is often the harvest of those seeds. By practicing mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we create conditions for future encounters that uplift and transform. This is the first step in realizing the Buddhist wisdom that nothing is coincidence. It is the invitation to see the world not as a chaotic collection of accidents, but as a living web in which everything is connected and in which every moment holds meaning. If you found value in this reflection and wish to continue exploring how Buddhist wisdom can transform your understanding of life, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. By joining, you will not only deepen your own journey, but also support the sharing of teachings that can bring clarity, peace, and inspiration to countless others. The law of karma and the illusion of randomness. Karma is perhaps one of the most misunderstood concepts in the modern world, often reduced to a simplistic notion of fate or a cosmic system of rewards and punishments. Yet in Buddhist wisdom, karma is neither arbitrary nor vengeful. It is the natural law of cause and effect operating across all realms of existence, a principle as reliable and consistent as gravity. To grasp the depth of karma is to recognize that nothing in our lives, no joy, no sorrow, no challenge, no blessing, arises without a cause. And when we understand this, we begin to see that what we call coincidence is often the unfolding of karmic patterns that stretch across time, linking our past intentions to our present experiences. When the Buddha spoke of karma, he did not describe it as a rigid destiny, but as a dynamic interplay of seeds we plant through our actions, speech, and thoughts. Every choice we make, whether conscious or unconscious, leaves an imprint on the fabric of our being. Some seeds ripen quickly, like the immediate consequence of speaking harshly and causing pain to another. Others lie dormant for years, surfacing in ways we may not recognize as connected. Yet the law is consistent. Wholesome actions lead to wholesome fruits, while unwholesome actions bear suffering. This is not punishment or reward imposed by an external deity, but the natural unfolding of causes and conditions set in motion by our own intentions. To live without awareness of karma is to see life as a series of accidents, to believe that blessings come by luck and misfortunes by chance. But to live with awareness of karma is to recognize that our present is shaped by our past, and our future is being shaped by what we do in this very moment. A person who repeatedly cultivates patience, generosity, and compassion creates conditions for a life of peace and connection. A person who feeds anger, greed, and ignorance creates conditions for turmoil and isolation. These patterns may not always be visible immediately, but they are inevitable, woven into the very nature of existence. This recognition transforms the way we interpret our lives. Suppose you encounter someone who becomes a lifelong friend, guiding you through hardships and supporting your growth. From the surface, this might seem like coincidence, as if fate randomly placed them in your path. But through the lens of karma, this meeting is the fruit of seeds planted long ago, perhaps through past acts of kindness, or perhaps even through bonds that extend beyond this lifetime. Similarly, when we face adversaries who challenge us deeply, this too is not a matter of chance, but the ripening of karmic seeds that compel us to confront what remains unresolved within us. The illusion of randomness persists, because we cannot always see the full chain of causes. Just as we might plant a seed and forget about it until it suddenly sprouts years later, our actions often bear fruit long after the moment they were created. Without awareness of the seed, we imagine the sprout appeared out of nowhere, a coincidence. But when we understand karma, we realize nothing arises uncaused. Every encounter, every opportunity, every obstacle carries the echo of past actions. This insight invites a radical shift in responsibility. Instead of blaming external forces for our suffering, we begin to recognize our role in shaping our experiences. This does not mean that all suffering is the result of something we personally did in this life. Buddhist teachings acknowledge the vast and intricate nature of karma, spanning multiple lifetimes and interdependent with the karma of countless beings around us. But it does mean that by transforming our present intentions, we can reshape the trajectory of our future. Karma is not a prison of destiny, but a field of freedom, where every mindful choice plants new seeds that can blossom into wisdom and liberation. To understand how karma dissolves the illusion of coincidence, consider the story of the Buddha himself. Born as Siddhartha Gautama into a royal family, he could have easily lived a life of luxury and ignorance. But his encounter with the four sights, an old man, a sick man, a corpse, and a wandering ascetic, shook him profoundly and set him on the path to enlightenment. Were these encounters coincidences? To the untrained eye, perhaps. But through the lens of karma, they were the inevitable conditions that ripened at the right time, the fruits of countless lifetimes of seeking truth. These sights appeared when Siddhartha was ready, and they catalyzed the fulfillment of his deepest karmic potential. Our own lives follow similar patterns, though we may not always recognize them. The sudden loss of a job might seem like misfortune, yet it could be the karmic clearing necessary for us to discover a deeper vocation. The end of a relationship might feel devastating, but it may be the karmic lesson that awakens us to self-love and the capacity to form healthier bonds. The arrival of a mentor or teacher at just the right moment may appear serendipitous, but it is often the result of seeds planted through past sincerity and effort. Karma is not random, it is precise, unfolding with perfect timing, even when that timing is painful. This does not mean we should resign ourselves to whatever happens, believing that karma dictates every detail of our lives without room for change. On the contrary, the Buddha emphasized that karma is shaped by intention, and intention is something we can cultivate in the present moment. Each breath offers us the opportunity to plant seeds of awareness instead of ignorance, compassion instead of cruelty, generosity instead of selfishness. By practicing mindfulness and ethical conduct, we transform not only our own lives, but also the lives of those around us, creating conditions that ripple outward into the future. Meditation reveals this truth directly. When we observe the mind, we notice how thoughts arise from subtle conditions, an old memory, a fleeting desire, a buried fear. These thoughts are not random. They are karmic seeds surfacing. By watching them without clinging or aversion, we learn to dissolve their power, preventing them from planting new seeds of suffering. In this way, meditation becomes the practice of karmic purification, a way of breaking free from unconscious cycles and opening space for wisdom to flourish. To live with awareness of karma also fosters compassion. When we encounter someone who acts with cruelty or ignorance, it is easy to dismiss them as evil or to assume they harm others by coincidence. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us to look deeper. Their actions are the fruit of seeds planted in suffering and delusion, often stretching back through lifetimes of pain. This does not excuse harm, but it does help us meet others with understanding rather than hatred. Just as a person bitten by a snake may strike out in panic, those who harm are often driven by the venom of their own unresolved karma. Seeing this, we respond with compassion, offering the antidote of kindness, rather than fueling the cycle of suffering. Likewise, when we experience blessings, we recognize them not as random gifts, but as the fruition of wholesome seeds. This recognition fills us with gratitude, encouraging us to continue planting seeds of goodness. Gratitude is itself a powerful karmic force, opening the heart and strengthening bonds of connection. Instead of taking joy for granted, we honor it as the precious fruit of countless causes, many of which we may never fully see. The practical application of this understanding is profound. It calls us to live with vigilance, knowing that every word, thought, and deed plants seeds. It encourages us to cultivate mindfulness, pausing before reacting in anger, choosing instead to sow peace. It inspires us to practice generosity, recognizing that every act of giving creates conditions for abundance. It guides us to speak truthfully, to act ethically, to care for others, not because we fear punishment or seek reward, but because we know that the seeds we plant will inevitably shape the world we inhabit. In this way, karma dissolves the illusion of randomness and reveals the deep order beneath life's unfolding. What appears to be coincidence is often the ripening of seeds planted long ago. The stranger who saves your life, the challenge that awakens your strength, the opportunity that arises just when you need it, these are not accidents but the flowering of karmic conditions. When we see this clearly, we no longer cling to the idea of luck or curse our misfortunes. Instead, we walk with humility, gratitude, and responsibility, knowing that we are co-creators of the world we experience. Living with this awareness does not mean we can predict every outcome or trace every event back to its root cause. The web of karma is vast and intricate, beyond the capacity of any single mind to comprehend fully. But it does mean we can trust that nothing is without cause, nothing is without meaning. This trust frees us from despair when life feels chaotic and from arrogance when life feels fortunate. It grounds us in the steady truth that every moment is connected, and that by cultivating wisdom and compassion, we can shape those connections in ways that bring liberation for ourselves and others. Thus, the Buddhist teaching of karma transforms our view of coincidence into a vision of meaning. Nothing is random because everything arises from seeds, and those seeds are planted through intention. To live with this awareness is to step out of the blindness of chance and into the clarity of responsibility and freedom. It is to recognize that our lives are not accidents, but opportunities. Opportunities to awaken, to grow, and to contribute to the vast, interdependent web of existence. If you are finding these reflections meaningful and wish to continue deepening your journey into Buddhist wisdom, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you will stay connected to teachings that illuminate the hidden patterns of life, dissolve the illusion of coincidence, and guide you toward a path of greater peace, compassion, and transformation. Impermanence, suffering, and the hidden meaning behind life's events. Impermanence, or anicca, is one of the most profound insights of Buddhist wisdom. To say that nothing is coincidence is also to say that everything that arises in life arises within the law of impermanence, appearing and disappearing according to conditions. Nothing lasts forever, no state of joy, no moment of pain, no relationship, no body, no idea. This truth, while at first difficult to accept, is one of the greatest keys to liberation, because it reveals that every event, every experience, carries a hidden meaning rooted in its temporary nature. When we cling to permanence, we suffer because we demand from life a stability it cannot give. But when we embrace impermanence, we discover that change itself is the ground of growth and transformation, and that within every ending there is the seed of a new beginning. Many people resist impermanence because it seems to strip life of security. We fear losing what we love: family, possessions, health, status, comfort. We also fear that our struggles will never end, that pain will cling to us forever. Yet impermanence tells us two things at once. What we love cannot remain unchanged, and what we fear cannot last forever. This double truth carries deep meaning, for it invites us to treasure the fleeting beauty of each moment and to endure hardship with patience, knowing it too will pass. In this way, impermanence dissolves the illusion of randomness by showing that everything comes and goes according to natural laws, not by accident, but by necessity. When we reflect on suffering, or dukkha, in light of impermanence, we begin to see why nothing in life is without meaning. Suffering often feels senseless, as though pain strikes blindly and without purpose. But the Buddha taught that suffering is the great teacher, the first noble truth that opens the path to awakening. If we never suffered, we would never seek liberation. If we never felt the impermanence of joy, we would cling endlessly, never seeing beyond the surface of pleasure. Every moment of suffering, therefore, has meaning. It is the call to awareness, the invitation to look deeper. Nothing is coincidence, because each pain carries within it the chance to awaken compassion, wisdom, and resilience. Consider how many times in life a difficult event became the turning point for growth. The death of a loved one, while heartbreaking, often awakens in us a new appreciation for life, reminding us that every breath is precious. A betrayal by a friend, though painful, can teach us discernment and the courage to form more authentic connections. An illness can strip away illusions of control and open the heart to gratitude and humility. In the moment, these events may feel cruel and meaningless. But from the perspective of impermanence and suffering, they are part of the unfolding of wisdom, each one dissolving attachments and guiding us toward freedom. The Buddha himself faced impermanence and suffering at the core of his awakening. His sheltered youth in the palace shielded him from the harsh truths of aging, sickness, and death. But when he encountered these realities, he could no longer ignore the impermanence of all things. These encounters were not coincidences. They were the necessary conditions for the birth of the Dharma. In the same way, the events of our lives that break our illusions are not accidents, but awakenings, moments carefully aligned by the law of impermanence to reveal the truth we might otherwise ignore. Impermanence also gives meaning to joy. If joy were permanent, it would lose its radiance. It is because moments of laughter, beauty, and love pass so quickly that they shine so brightly in memory and in presence. A sunrise lasts only minutes, and its impermanence is what makes it so breathtaking. A child's laughter fades into silence, and it is precisely because it does not last that we treasure it. To call such moments coincidence is to miss their true nature. They are gifts of impermanence, reminders that life's beauty lies not in grasping, but in letting go. When we understand impermanence deeply, we begin to live differently. Instead of clinging desperately to what we love or resisting fiercely what we fear, we learn to flow with the rhythm of change. We savor joys without illusion and endure sorrows without despair. We see that nothing is coincidence because everything is part of this great dance of arising and passing away, each moment carrying a hidden lesson in the truth of impermanence. This insight transforms relationships. When we realize that those we love will not be with us forever, we begin to cherish them more fully in the present. We speak words of kindness instead of postponing them. We forgive instead of clinging to resentment. We listen instead of distracting ourselves. Impermanence reminds us that every encounter may be the last, and this awareness makes each meeting sacred. Likewise, when relationships end, through distance, conflict, or death, we understand that endings are not random punishments, but natural expressions of impermanence. Instead of drowning in despair, we bow to the truth of change and open ourselves to what new beginnings may come. Impermanence also reshapes our understanding of identity. We often cling to fixed ideas of who we are, our roles, careers, bodies, and stories. But impermanence shows us that the self is fluid, constantly changing, never the same from one moment to the next. The person you were yesterday is not the person you are today, and the person you will be tomorrow is already transforming. This recognition frees us from rigid self-concepts and allows us to grow beyond limitations. When life presents us with unexpected opportunities or challenges, they are not coincidences, but natural invitations to let go of old identities and step into new expressions of being. To practice with impermanence, meditation is essential. In meditation, we observe the arising and passing of sensations, thoughts, and emotions. We see directly that nothing lasts, that each breath comes and goes, that each thought arises and dissolves. This direct experience dissolves the illusion of permanence and reveals the dynamic nature of reality. Over time, we stop clinging so tightly, and a profound peace arises. A peace not based on holding things still, but on flowing gracefully with change. Impermanence also invites us to live ethically. When we recognize that life is fleeting, we realize there is no time for hatred, greed, or ignorance. Every moment wasted in anger is a moment lost forever. Every act of cruelty leaves a mark that may never be undone. But every act of kindness plants a seed that endures beyond the fleeting moment. Knowing that nothing lasts, we choose to spend our time planting seeds of goodness, for that is the only legacy that survives impermanence. The truth of impermanence can be frightening, but it is also liberating. It reminds us that no pain is eternal, that even the deepest sorrow will eventually pass. It also reminds us that no joy can be clung to, that trying to hold on only brings suffering. In this balance lies wisdom, to savor joy without grasping, and to endure pain without despair. This wisdom reveals that nothing in life is random or meaningless. Every experience, whether delightful or painful, arises within the law of impermanence and carries the potential for awakening. When we bring impermanence into daily life, coincidences dissolve into clarity. The unexpected phone call that changes your life, the sudden loss that forces you to grow, the fleeting beauty that inspires your heart. None of these are accidents. They are impermanence speaking, guiding, teaching, reminding you that life is precious because it does not last. The teaching of impermanence also opens the door to compassion. When we see that all beings are subject to change, aging, sickness, and death, we recognize our shared vulnerability. No one escapes impermanence. Kings and beggars alike are swept along by its current. This recognition softens the heart, dissolving pride and envy, awakening compassion for all who suffer the fragility of life. In this way, impermanence binds us together in empathy, reminding us that our struggles are not isolated, but universal. Nothing is coincidence, because everything is impermanence unfolding. The sudden shift in your life is not an arbitrary event, but part of the great river of change that carries us all. To resist it is to drown. To embrace it is to awaken. Each joy, each sorrow, each fleeting moment is a wave in this river, carrying meaning not because it lasts, but because it changes. Therefore, to live in awareness of impermanence is to live fully. We stop waiting for life to be stable and perfect, and we begin to live with presence and gratitude in each moment. We see that every event is meaningful, every encounter precious, every challenge an invitation to let go. Nothing is coincidence, because everything is impermanence teaching us how to awaken. If you have found resonance in this reflection and wish to continue deepening your understanding of Buddhist wisdom, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you will stay connected to teachings that illuminate the truth of impermanence, dissolve the illusion of coincidence, and guide you toward living with greater awareness, compassion, and peace. Mindfulness, awareness, and the subtle patterns of existence. To understand that nothing is coincidence requires more than an intellectual grasp of interdependence, karma, and impermanence. It requires direct perception of the present moment, cultivated through mindfulness and awareness. Mindfulness, or sati, is the practice of paying attention intentionally, without judgment, to what is arising here and now. It is a simple practice, yet profoundly transformative, because it reveals the subtle patterns of existence that are often hidden beneath the noise of distraction. When we live without mindfulness, life appears random, fragmented, and confusing, as if events crash upon us without reason. But when we live with mindfulness, we begin to see the intricate connections between inner and outer worlds, between thoughts and actions, between choices and consequences. We discover that nothing is coincidence because everything is revealed as part of a larger pattern unfolding before our very eyes. Mindfulness begins with something as basic as the breath. By focusing on the inhalation and exhalation, we discover that each breath arises due to countless conditions: the air we breathe, the body that draws it in, the environment that sustains us, the consciousness that observes. Already in this simple act, the illusion of independence begins to dissolve. Each breath is not an isolated event, but part of a continuum, interdependent with the entire cosmos. When we rest in this awareness, even breathing becomes sacred, a reminder that life itself is the product of infinite conditions aligning in this moment. As mindfulness deepens, we begin to notice the flow of thoughts and emotions. What once seemed random mental chatter reveals itself as patterns shaped by memories, desires, fears, and conditioning. A thought of anger may arise after a memory of being wronged. A feeling of joy may surface after hearing a kind word. None of these mental events are coincidences. They all arise from causes. Through mindfulness, we learn to observe without clinging or aversion, and in doing so, we unravel the illusion of randomness within the mind itself. Each thought is a seed, each emotion a wave, each one connected to countless conditions. This awareness extends outward into daily life. The more mindful we are, the more we perceive the subtle synchronicities that shape our days. The book that falls open to the exact passage we needed to read, the stranger whose words echo the very question we were contemplating, the delay that spares us from danger. These are not coincidences, but the flowering of interdependent conditions. When the mind is distracted, these events pass unnoticed or are dismissed as chance. But when the mind is attentive, they are recognized as teachings, invitations to awaken to the interconnected fabric of existence. The Buddha often emphasized that mindfulness is the direct path to liberation, because it reveals reality as it is, not as we imagine it to be. And reality, when seen clearly, shows that nothing is arbitrary. The bird that sings outside your window, the storm that interrupts your plans, the silence that follows meditation. Each has meaning not imposed from outside, but arising naturally from the web of conditions in which we live. Mindfulness opens our eyes to this meaning, helping us see that what we once called coincidence is, in fact, life speaking in patterns too subtle to notice without awareness. This practice also transforms how we interpret suffering and joy. Without mindfulness, we react blindly, clinging to pleasure and resisting pain, trapped in cycles of craving and aversion. With mindfulness, we see suffering as an opportunity to practice patience and compassion, and we see joy as an opportunity to practice gratitude and non-attachment. In this way, both suffering and joy reveal their deeper meaning. Nothing is coincidence, because every experience becomes a chance to practice the Dharma, to cultivate wisdom, and to move closer to liberation. Mindfulness reveals not only the patterns in our own lives, but also the collective patterns of humanity and nature. When we observe carefully, we see that societies rise and fall according to the same principles of cause and effect that shape individual lives. Greed leads to exploitation, which leads to conflict. Compassion leads to cooperation, which leads to harmony. These are not coincidences, but the natural unfolding of karmic patterns on a collective scale. Likewise, in nature, mindfulness allows us to see the cycles of birth, growth, decay, and renewal, reminding us that nothing is out of place, nothing without reason. The blooming of flowers in spring, the falling of leaves in autumn, the migration of birds, the ebb and flow of tides, all of these are expressions of a greater order, not random events. To live mindfully is to align ourselves with this order. Instead of fighting the flow of life, we learn to move with it, trusting that each moment carries meaning. This does not mean that we become passive, accepting injustice or harm without action. On the contrary, mindfulness sharpens discernment, allowing us to respond skillfully to the conditions of each moment. By acting with awareness, we plant seeds of harmony and healing, transforming both ourselves and the world around us. Consider how mindfulness reshapes relationships. When we are not mindful, we often hurt others unintentionally, speaking without awareness, reacting with anger, or neglecting to listen. These moments can seem like accidents, coincidences of mood or circumstance, but mindfulness reveals that every word and action has causes and consequences. By paying attention, we see how a careless remark can wound deeply and how a kind gesture can heal profoundly. Nothing in our interactions is coincidence. Everything carries weight, everything plants seeds. This awareness makes us more compassionate, more careful, more present in our relationships. Mindfulness also reveals the subtle ways the universe responds to our inner states. When we cultivate peace within, we often find that peace reflected around us. When we nurture anger, we encounter more conflict. These are not coincidences, but mirrors, the world reflecting the seeds we plant in our hearts. Many spiritual traditions speak of this principle, but in Buddhism it is seen as the natural law of interdependence. The mind is not separate from the world. The patterns we cultivate internally shape the conditions we experience externally. Mindfulness allows us to witness this directly, transforming coincidence into clarity. The practice of mindfulness requires discipline, for the mind resists stillness. We live in a world of constant distraction, where noise, information, and stimulation pull our attention in countless directions. Without effort, we remain scattered, unable to perceive the deeper patterns of existence. But through meditation, mindful breathing, walking, eating, and speaking, we slowly retrain the mind to rest in awareness. With time, mindfulness becomes not a practice we do, but a way of being, a constant presence in every moment. And in this presence, life reveals itself as meaningful, connected, whole. One of the profound gifts of mindfulness is the ability to see synchronicities not as magical accidents, but as natural expressions of interconnection. When the mind is quiet and open, it becomes sensitive to subtle alignments. The dream that prepares us for the day ahead, the intuition that guides us to the right choice, the unexpected encounter that opens a door. These are not random. They are signs of the mind and world moving in harmony. The more mindful we are, the more these synchronicities appear, not because the world has changed, but because our awareness has deepened. This perspective also protects us from superstition. Without mindfulness, we may interpret coincidences as signs of fate, without understanding their true nature. We may cling to them, seeking meaning in external symbols rather than cultivating wisdom within. But mindfulness reveals that meaning is not imposed from outside. It arises naturally from interdependence. The flower blooming at your feet, the word spoken at the right time, the challenge that arises unexpectedly, these are not arbitrary messages from beyond, but expressions of the interconnected fabric of reality. With mindfulness, we learn to read these expressions without attachment, allowing them to guide us without enslaving us. Living with mindfulness transforms even the most ordinary moments. Drinking a cup of tea becomes a meditation on interdependence. The rain that watered the leaves, the farmers who cultivated them, the hands that prepared the drink, the warmth of the water, the breath that savors it. Nothing about this cup of tea is coincidence. It is the culmination of countless causes. By drinking it mindfully, we awaken to the miracle of existence contained in something as simple as tea. The same is true for walking, for eating, for speaking, for resting. Every moment is meaningful when lived in awareness. The practice of mindfulness also deepens our capacity for compassion and service. When we are attentive, we notice the suffering of others more clearly, and we respond with kindness. We see that their pain is not a random accident, but the result of causes, and that our actions can become conditions for their healing. This recognition empowers us to act skillfully, planting seeds of relief rather than perpetuating harm. In this way, mindfulness is not only personal, but also profoundly social, transforming the way we relate to others and to the world. Over time, mindfulness reveals that the idea of coincidence itself is an illusion born of inattentiveness. Life is not a series of disconnected events, but a continuous flow of causes and conditions, each linked to the next in an endless chain. When we pay attention, we see this flow clearly, and we live with trust in its wisdom. What once felt random becomes meaningful, what once felt chaotic becomes harmonious, what once felt empty becomes full. Therefore, mindfulness is not merely a practice for calming the mind. It is the key to perceiving the truth that nothing is coincidence. It is the way we awaken to the patterns of existence, the subtle synchronicities that guide our lives, the hidden meanings behind every joy and sorrow. It is the invitation to live fully present, fully aware, fully alive. If this reflection has deepened your understanding, and you wish to continue exploring the wisdom of mindfulness and its power to transform life, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you will remain connected to teachings that reveal the hidden order of existence, dissolve the illusion of coincidence, and guide you toward a life of awareness, compassion, and peace. Awakening to interconnection and living with purpose. To say that nothing is coincidence is ultimately to awaken to the truth of interconnection that permeates every aspect of existence. The threads of karma, the law of impermanence, and the practice of mindfulness all converge in this realization. Life is not random, nor is it meaningless. Every encounter, every challenge, every fleeting joy arises within a vast web of conditions that stretches beyond what our minds can fully grasp. When we open ourselves to this vision, we begin to live with a sense of purpose, recognizing that our lives are part of a larger tapestry and that our actions ripple outward in ways both visible and unseen. This awakening is not about controlling life or predicting its every turn, but about aligning ourselves with the flow of interdependence, acting with awareness, compassion, and wisdom so that the seeds we plant create harmony rather than discord. The great paradox of human life is that we crave meaning, but often look for it in the wrong places. We chase wealth, recognition, and external security, believing these will give our lives significance. Yet even when we achieve them, we often feel empty because they are impermanent and cannot satisfy the deepest hunger of the heart. The Buddhist path teaches us that true meaning does not come from clinging to external forms, but from realizing our interconnection with all beings and living in alignment with that truth. When we see that nothing is coincidence, we understand that our purpose is not to dominate or possess, but to awaken, to serve, to love, to contribute to the well-being of the whole. This realization transforms how we view success and failure. In a world obsessed with individual achievement, failure often feels like a meaningless setback, a random blow of fate. But when seen through the lens of interconnection, failure is simply a redirection, the unfolding of conditions that guide us toward growth. A closed door is not a coincidence, but a sign that the path lies elsewhere. Success, too, is not merely the product of personal effort, but the fruit of countless conditions, teachers, communities, ancestors, opportunities that converge in our lives. To call it coincidence or luck is to ignore the depth of interdependence that sustains it. Gratitude arises naturally when we see this truth, for we recognize that we are never alone in our victories, nor abandoned in our struggles. Awakening to interconnection also dissolves the illusion of separation that fuels so much suffering in the world. We often see ourselves as isolated individuals, competing for resources, defending our egos, struggling against others. This illusion breeds greed, hatred, and ignorance, the three poisons that the Buddha identified as the root of suffering. But when we awaken to the truth that nothing is coincidence, we also awaken to the reality that we are deeply connected to all beings. The food we eat, the air we breathe, the clothes we wear, all are the product of countless lives and labors. Our joys and sorrows ripple outward, affecting others in ways we may never see. When we hurt another, we hurt ourselves. When we help another, we help ourselves. This recognition gives rise to compassion, for we see that the boundary between self and other is thinner than we once believed. Living with this awareness invites us to act with greater responsibility. Every choice we make matters, not only for ourselves, but for the whole web of existence. Words spoken in anger plant seeds of suffering that may echo across generations. Acts of kindness, no matter how small, create ripples of healing that may touch lives we will never meet. Nothing is coincidence, because everything we do contributes to the unfolding of reality. This truth can feel overwhelming, but it is also empowering, for it means that even the smallest actions are meaningful. A smile, a gentle word, a moment of patience. These are not trivial. They are threads in the great tapestry of life, shaping the conditions of the future. When we live in this way, life ceases to feel fragmented. We no longer divide our experiences into meaningful and meaningless, important and unimportant, fortunate and unfortunate. Instead, we see that everything has its place. Everything carries a lesson. Everything is part of the path. The traffic jam that forces us to pause, the illness that humbles us, the unexpected kindness that restores our faith, none of these are coincidences. They are conditions arising for our awakening. This perspective does not eliminate suffering, but it transforms it, giving us the strength to endure and the wisdom to learn. Meditation is the practice that grounds us in this awareness. In stillness, we begin to perceive the subtle interconnections between breath, body, mind, and world. We see how thoughts ripple into emotions, how emotions ripple into actions, how actions ripple into consequences. We see how our inner state shapes our experience of the outer world, and how the outer world reflects our inner state. This is not coincidence, but the law of interdependence revealed in real time. Through meditation, we learn to rest in this flow, neither clinging nor resisting, but aligning ourselves with the deeper currents of existence. Awakening to interconnection also reshapes our relationship with death. Death is often feared as a meaningless end, a random rupture in the continuity of life. But in Buddhist wisdom, death is not an accident or a coincidence. It is the natural transition within the cycle of impermanence and rebirth. Just as a leaf falls from a tree to nourish the soil for new growth, so too does death create conditions for renewal. When we see this, death loses its terror, and we live with greater courage and presence. We realize that the purpose of life is not to avoid death, but to awaken before it comes, to live so fully that when death arrives, we greet it not with regret, but with gratitude. This perspective also brings peace to grief. Losing a loved one may feel senseless, as though the universe has struck us arbitrarily. But when we understand that nothing is coincidence, we see that their presence in our lives, however brief, was a gift woven from countless causes, and that their absence, too, carries lessons of impermanence, compassion, and love. Grief is not meaningless. It is the expression of love, the proof of our interconnection. To feel grief is to feel the depth of our bonds, and in that sense, grief is itself a teacher, guiding us toward greater empathy for all who suffer loss. Awakening to interconnection also invites us to live more harmoniously with the natural world. Modern life often treats nature as a backdrop or a resource to be exploited, but Buddhist wisdom reminds us that we are not separate from the earth, the water, the air, the trees, the animals. Nothing is coincidence, because every part of nature sustains us. The rain that falls, the soil that nourishes, the sun that warms, all are conditions for our survival and well-being. To harm nature is to harm ourselves, and to care for nature is to care for ourselves. When we see this, ecological responsibility is no longer a burden, but a natural expression of compassion. The recognition that nothing is coincidence also deepens our faith, not necessarily in a deity or supernatural force, but in the order and wisdom of reality itself. We learn to trust the unfolding of life, even when we do not understand it. We stop demanding that life conform to our desires and instead open ourselves to the lessons each moment offers. This trust does not mean passivity. It means we act with courage and clarity, knowing that our actions matter, while also accepting that outcomes are shaped by countless conditions beyond our control. In this balance of effort and surrender, we find peace. Ultimately, to live with the awareness that nothing is coincidence is to live with purpose. Purpose is not something we must invent or impose upon life. It is discovered in the very fabric of interconnection. Our purpose is to awaken, to see clearly, to love deeply, to act compassionately. It is to recognize that every moment is an opportunity to plant seeds of wisdom and compassion, and that these seeds are never wasted, even if we never see their fruits. This purpose is not grandiose. It does not require fame or achievement. It is fulfilled in simple acts of presence and kindness, in the courage to face suffering, in the willingness to let go, in the choice to serve others. In this way, the Buddhist teaching that nothing is coincidence transforms life into a sacred journey. Every step, every encounter, every breath is meaningful. The past is not a chain of random events, but the unfolding of karma. The present is not a meaningless moment, but the meeting point of countless causes. The future is not a blank accident, but the field of possibilities shaped by our intentions. To live with this awareness is to live awake, to live with reverence, to live in harmony with the great web of existence. And so, as we conclude this exploration, let us remember, nothing in your life has been coincidence. The joys that shaped you, the sorrows that tested you, the teachers who guided you, the strangers who crossed your path, all of these were conditions arising for your awakening. Even your encounter with these words is not by chance. It is part of your journey, part of the unfolding of your own search for meaning. The question is not whether life has meaning, but whether we are willing to awaken to it, to live with awareness, and to align ourselves with the truth of interconnection. If this reflection has spoken to your heart and you wish to continue deepening your journey into Buddhist wisdom, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you will remain connected to teachings that illuminate the hidden meaning of life, dissolve the illusion of coincidence, and guide you toward living with awareness, compassion, and purpose.